Sorry I'm late. I forgot my bag and had to go home.
No problem. Not that late.
We've already voted on everything.
Okay.
I was actually here. I saw Debbie.
Mm.
Okay. Okay, if everyone please stand. Call to order the Town of North Wilkesboro Board of Commissioners regular meeting, April the 6th, 2021. I'm going to do the invocation, and Chief Thornburg, if you would, you lead us in the pledge, sir. Yes, sir. Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you again as humbly as we know how, just lifting your precious name up on high, and Lord, just recognizing that you are the Almighty God. We thank you, Lord, for the blessings that you bestow upon us from day to day. We thank you for what you do for our town. We thank you for what you do for our citizens and for our town board of commissioners. Please help us to let you be in the center of all of our decisions, that we may make wise decisions for ourselves as commissioners and as the mayor, that we might represent our citizens and pass those decisions on to them in a way that would be pleasing to you and pleasing to them. We ask that you would bless those now, Lord, in need of your healing touch, those in hospitals, rest homes, wherever they may be. Be with them, comfort them and their families. And I ask all this in Christ Jesus' holy name. Amen. If you would, Chief Thornburg.
Pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. And the next item on the agenda is additions, relations to the agenda. Wilson, do we have any?
No, sir, we have a couple of updates for specific agenda items that we'll hand out when we get there, but no additions or deletions.
Okay. All right. Item number 5 is I need a motion to approve the agenda as stated. Okay, have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion or questions? There being none, all those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, none opposed, motion carries. All righty. Next item on the agenda is swearing in of our new North Wilkesboro police officers, Donald Caldwell and Brian Beatty. Okay. Who wants to come be first? Come on up. There you go. I'm gonna come around there too.
Is there someone here that wants to?
Would
hold
you,
this?
want your wife or somebody to hold the Bible for you?
Grandma, do you feel like it?
Grandma?
Do you feel like doing it?
Sure.
I think that'd be sweet.
That'd be nice. I'm coming around there too.
Yeah.
I'll bring this Bible.
Rob, you got this photo?
Yes, sir.
You're good, Andrew. Okay. Bible. You place your left hand on the Bible, please, and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Brian Logan Beatty,
I, Brian Logan Beatty,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain
that I will support and maintain
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
that I will be alert and vigilant
that I will be alert and vigilant
to enforce the criminal laws of this state,
to enforce the criminal laws of this state,
that I will not be influenced in any matter
that I will not be influenced in any matter
on account of personal bias
on account of personal bias
or prejudice,
or prejudice,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
execute the duties of my office
execute the duties of my office
as a police officer with the North Wilkesboro Police Department,
as a police officer with the North Wilkesboro Police Department,
according to the best of my skills,
according to the best of my skills,
abilities,
abilities,
and judgment.
and judgment.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I now declare you duly sworn. If you will step right here, I'll let you sign. And sign your name and then I'll sign mine. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, for That's a officer signature, all right. Okay, thank you, sir. Donald Lee Caldwell, come forward, sir.
Yes, sir.
You have someone you want to hold the Bible?
My wife got tied up at work. Sorry about that.
They want to untie her?
No, I think they're gonna keep it for a little while.
Well, let's see. All right, come on up, sir. That'll work. His first duty out here. You come over here on this side. Here you go. Place left hand on the Bible, raise your right. And repeat after me. I, Donald Lee Caldwell,
I, Donald Lee Caldwell,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and maintain the Constitution
that I will support and maintain the Constitution
and laws of the United States,
and the laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of North Carolina,
of North Carolina,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therewith,
that I will be alert and vigilant
that I will be alert and vigilant
to enforce the criminal laws of this state,
to enforce the criminal laws of this state,
and that I will not be influenced
and that I will not be
in
influenced
any matter
in any matter
on account of personal bias
on account of personal bias
or prejudice,
or prejudice,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
execute the duties of my office
execute the duties of my office
as a police officer with the North Wilkesboro Police Department,
as a police officer with the North Wilkesboro Police Department,
according to the best of my skill,
according to the best of my skill,
abilities,
abilities,
and judgment.
and judgment.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I now therefore declare you duly sworn.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll get you to sign. Let's see if you got that same kind of signature. Absolutely, I can't read it. You.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now,
I sold it before, I met a guy, and he was thinking I was on town, and I realized. And he's not, yeah, I sold him last week, too.
Wow. Have you seen it online?
Yeah.
our next item on the agenda is public comments. Is anybody here, Wilson, that you know of?
Nobody's signed in. No, sir.
He's going from Knoxville.
Okay. Item number 8, consent agenda. Take them in order. Need the approval of the meeting minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that we can make a motion to agree to all the consent items unless there's someone that wishes to take one out. So unless someone objects, I'll make a motion that we accept A, B, and C at the consent agenda for approval.
I saw a little thing on the meeting minutes that we might need to change, I don't know. On the, one for March 25th, I saw that it said we needed via Zoom, but we met in person, does that matter?
Say that again.
On the meeting minutes for March 25th, at the top of it, it says we met on Zoom, does that matter?
Well, we had the Zoom option, but we did it in person. So we'll edit the minutes to make sure that that's accurately
Oh,
reflected.
okay, I didn't know. That's what I found out.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Then I'll amend my amendment, motion to include that one correction to the minutes and then seek approval for all three items in one motion.
thank you, Michael. I have a motion.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Debbie. A motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or changes that may be noted? If not, all those in favor, say, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, none opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. Okay. Now, item number 9. Town manager and/or town attorney's reports as needed.
Yes, sir. I do have a report on traffic calming, since that continues to be a hot topic. Wanted to bring you all up to date on some of the work that staff has been doing. Since you all named this as a priority for the coming year at the retreat last month, we'll be sending you information as it comes. So we'll be sure to keep you in the loop on this one.
What's that in my state, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll go over that shortly, Commissioner, if you don't mind. I want to say that I feel like we should feel pretty good about some of the steps we've taken. We've implemented the heavy truck ordinance. We've already installed some new speed limit signs on Finlay Avenue and some other places, but there's more to come. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about the status of the heavy truck ordinance implementation. So we've located the general areas for the signs, but our crews are still out working to find out the exact location of where they're going to be posted. We can say it's going to be on the corner of 2nd and J, but then you have to go out there and find exactly where it's going to be posted so that it won't intrude into the right of way, the travel lane, so that it won't cause sightline problems and so forth. So we're still working on that. Our crews are still out there figuring out exactly where those signs are going to be posted. Our staff group that's been working on this has also been deliberating whether to add an additional sign over and above the no through trucks signs that we're going to add that says something to the effect of entering a residential area, please obey speed limits. I don't know if that would be the exact wording, but something to that effect. But as for the signs, I suspect that it'll be another month or 6 weeks before they're installed, because we still need to order the rest of them and figure out where they're going to be installed and then go out there and install it. As for Chief Thornburg's enforcement plan, he's here to answer any questions on that, but it's been published publicly in the JP. It involves educating and warning offenders at first and only issuing tickets after an extensive sort of education campaign has been conducted. But the heavy truck ordinance isn't the full extent of our traffic calming efforts. Over the last 6 months, we've run 2 experiments with traffic calming measures. The first was a physical reconfiguration of 6th Street to narrow the travel lanes. Sometimes narrowing the travel lanes subconsciously gets drivers to slow down. The second experiment was posting the digital speed sign on 8th Street. The sign, of course, tells you how fast you're going, and that also sort of plays with the psychology of the driver and motivates them to slow down. The data for both of these experiments I've shared with you and with Ms. Cheek, and it indicates that those measures had some effects on speed and volume. It wasn't a 50% cut in speed and a 75% cut in volume, but it was a statistically significant impact on speeds and volumes from those 2 measures. But you know, when you run an experiment, you got to have a control group to make sure that the effects you're seeing aren't coincidental. And our control group was Trident Avenue. And Rob just sent me the data for that late last week. So I'm going to go over that and see if the effects we saw on the other streets were the results of our traffic calming measures or just coincidental. So we'll know that soon. But I'd like to actually run a few more experiments and test a few other traffic calming measures, including some of the ones that Caprice has suggested. I'd like to run an experiment on making, I can't remember which street it was, but one of the streets there off Second one way. I'd like to run an experiment on speed humps, as she's suggested. And I'd like to run an experiment on what's called curb radius reductions. So I wish I had a drawing or something, but if a curve is designed in such a way that a driver can take it at speed, they're going to carry that speed onto the residential street. If you sort of square out the curve and make the driver have to slow down and then turn a little sharper to get onto the road, they won't carry as much speed onto the road. Those kind of curbs are also safer for pedestrians because it minimizes the space that the pedestrian has to walk on the street. It makes the sidewalks closer together. So those have a lot of benefits, and I'd like to test some of those as well. So staff is working on ways to implement these experiments and objectively capture the effect that the changes have on traffic. But I want to talk about speed humps in particular because they're the sort of solution that a lot of people have been talking about. They go by different names: speed humps, speed tables, speed cushions. What we're not talking about though is speed bumps. So those narrow little ones that go ka-thunk, ka-thunk when you go over, those don't really have much effectiveness slowing traffic on a big street. We're talking about humps and things that are a little bit wider that you really have to slow down to get over. But I'm going to use the term speed hump tonight just since that's the most common one. We might end up with a table, but tonight I'm going to call it a speed hump. So staff is currently searching the market to see if there's an affordable temporary speed hump fixture we could use to test the effectiveness of these measures. We found a few, but they're pricey, so we're still looking. If we wanted to do humps permanently, we've been trying to identify the spots where they'd be most effective. And then we would shop around for the specific type of hump that would work on that street. For example, Commissioner Hall, Finley Avenue, it's a major corridor for emergency vehicles. So we wouldn't want to put anything on that street that slowed them down. There are specialty speed humps that are designed so that fire trucks and other emergency vehicles can essentially straddle them. If you're in a normal car, you'd have to go over the bump, but if you're in a wide wheelbase fire truck, you could sort of straddle the bump and not be slowed down by it. So those kind of features are out there, but again, they're expensive. With that said, a basic speed hump is not terribly expensive, perhaps under $1,000. But an off-the-shelf speed hump doesn't work in every application. It wouldn't work on Finley Avenue. We wouldn't want it to be there, just because of the thing I just mentioned, but also because the volume of traffic on that road would probably wear those down and make it so we'd have to rebuild them every few years. Sometimes you have to shell out for the bespoke speed hump. So we're looking into the possibility of putting just a few speed humps in very specific spots that may deter traffic from even entering the grid, and therefore precluding the need to put them on 8th Street and 6th Street and Trident Street and everywhere else. And then finally, I'm heavily leaning towards recommending in my budget, which we'll talk about next week, this will be one of the things on the agenda, that we appropriate money from a couple of old, still opened capital project funds, not capital project, for this purpose. It would be in the tens of thousands of dollars, so it would be enough to do, it wouldn't be enough to do everything on the menu, but I think it would be enough to do some starter projects and to get some things in the ground to see how they work before we invested lots and lots of money into physical reconfigurations. So that was my update on the traffic calming stuff. Staff's working on it. We met last week, we're meeting again this week. We talk about it frequently. So this is on our minds. It's definitely something that we're working hard on. And we're getting to the point soon where we should be able to, where we will have some things on the street that people can see the results of our labor. So just wanted to bring you an update on that.
Nelson, I'd like to thank you for that, because since you have arrived here, you knew that was an important matter to us, and you have been tending to trying to find solutions. It's not something that, I mean, off the cuff, you would think, oh, they'll do this, that, and the other. And truthfully, we did the four-way stops and speed reductions kind of off the cuff, always talking with our police chiefs, but still not a whole lot of thought was put into them and the effects. And then we really sort of hit a wall for a decade or so and didn't know what to do. And you have done a great job of bringing options in, and the idea of testing options is a real asset rather than spending money and making a mistake. And every action we take does have a reaction on other streets. And so I do appreciate the thought you are putting into this matter. And I feel like what you come up with will be, it won't be perfect because there is no perfect solution to this problem, but will be at least as well thought out as anything we've ever done. And thank you for that. And Chief Thornburg, I have a question on, I think it's on Trogdon Street right now, sort of in the neighborhood of the Woman's Club, on a speed limit sign. There's something that is like a temporary sign, kind of the shape of a speed limit sign, and it has a blue light. You think it's gonna flash up your speed, but it doesn't. So what's it doing?
All right, so what that does, it will actually tell you your speed if we have it turned on to tell you your speed.
Oh, okay.
But what happens is it only lasts for about a week on the battery. But what we're doing is we're collecting data from it. So by not shining the light and you just see the little blue light on it, that's just showing that it's active and it's tracking something and it's recording the data. So we get about 2 months out of it, just recording data.
Okay.
And so, you know, we've switched back and forth, but right now we are in data mode where Wilson just mentioned that we just sent him all the statistics from it. And so it's a lot of data. I mean,
I bet so.
it's quite a bit, but that's what that is. It's,
Okay.
it just, you're not seeing the numbers so we can get more time out of it.
Okay. But it's telling you our numbers.
Yes, it's recording the numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm glad you've done so much work on it. Thank you. The idea of your sign, I like the idea of that, where it says something like you said, you know, speed limit strictly enforced or whatever however you word it. I think that's important. I think it would not be a bad idea, like if we had a plan, like how you had your plan in the paper about the tractor trailer ordinance. Maybe if you had a traffic plan for the grid streets to let the community know, like, you know, we're gonna be stricter about it or whatever. I think that would be helpful. And to whatever capacity you have, people that you feel comfortable or could, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have people, if they're speeding beyond a certain point, pull them over. Even if we don't give them a ticket where you have to go to court, a warning or verbal warning, where people driving by would see a car pulled over and they don't know they're not getting a real ticket. Maybe I shouldn't say this publicly because I'm in the paper, but I think it would condition people to think, gosh, you got tickets through here. And it might help, but I think that Debbie was right when she said it's not going to be a perfect fix and we're going to have to try things. But since the last meeting, I sat at Caprice Cheek's house, who everybody knows she's real concerned about it, to see traffic, and it was worse than I thought. It was bad, and I think we should try to address it. And that's, you know, I want to support that. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I'm going to back Andrew up on that. I also have sat over there and watched people roll through, scooters just fly through. Like, I mean, just, you know, 45 miles an hour, boom, right through it. I know that there's cars sitting up on that hill sometimes for you guys. And maybe something we could do is there some way you can sit far enough that they don't see you, because they do. I mean, they literally look to see if you're there. Is maybe, and Caprice actually said this was something that she had thought about. I'm not gonna give myself credit, of just popping the lights and the sound, just to let people know you're there. And then there was a school bus when I was there come down 8th Street, and I knew it was going to kill somebody. I mean, the sound of it. And she managed to get on her brakes, and her 2 front tires were out over the line, over the sign a little bit. But I mean, she could have knocked out every pet crossing the road that day. And that's just from our school bus drivers. They have no fear of what or that lady, let me just say that one particular driver had no fear of coming down there, because I was like, what's coming? Something big's coming. Well, it was a school bus with no children on it.
But if you my street is one after another. One
Yes, sir.
I've got a suggestion, and I think I might have brought this up before. Up there at McDonald's, where the traffic light is. You pull up there and stop, but you got this one little zip lane that people just zip right in, right out through Burt's street they go, don't slow down. Some of them may, but the majority don't. So what if that portion of that suite belongs to us? It don't belong to DOT. What if we stopped that and just made a square intersection where they have to pull up there, either keep going on green or stop on red and then have to turn right? To me, I think that would stop a lot of that traffic going out your street. Bert, that's just a suggestion.
I agree with you, Mayor, and that's the first intersection we thought of when we thought of doing curb radius reduction, which is essentially what you've described. And I think we'd have to clarify who owns that right of way, because NCDOT does not want to do that on any of their streets that they control.
I think we own it.
Yeah, so we'd have to clarify that, but I agree with you.
Verify and clarify.
Okay, yes, sir.
Because I think we
You call.
I will, I'll call him. I'll let Wilson call first.
Wilson, do you have any sort of
That's my suggestion.
idea of when some of this stuff may take place? Is it going to be this summer or this fall? Or do you know?
Well, if we can do some experiments with our current resources. And so we might try to do some of those this spring. But the ones that we'd have to buy things for would have to be after the first of the fiscal year.
So we have budgeted for traffic calming measures in our new budget.
I'm going to recommend it, yes.
We're gonna talk about that.
We'll talk about the degree of it next
Yeah,
week.
I know we haven't, I've jumped ahead there a bit.
And I like those digital speed limit signs. I don't know if they slow people down. They slow me down.
What's the cost of the batteries though? Are they dead when they're dead, or can they be recharged?
Yes, they can be recharged, but if you're gonna put it in a permanent setting, you're gonna need to run permanent power to it.
Mhm.
And
Gotcha.
they're not cheap. They're expensive. The whole system is.
The
I would
sign,
think people get used to them though after a while. If you have the speed limit sign in the same place for years, I would think they get to where they just ignore them. Do you have statistics on that kind of thing?
I do not.
You know, the most success I have seen as far as four-way stops is up there on Trogdon on the long, what would have been the long street.
Yes.
That has been, as I come through there all the time, that has been a healthy, normal system as far as people waiting and going and coming up slow, not running, not zooming by. Something special is happening there. Those folks who live there, they have been blessed with that.
Sure.
I think that's
Have you
very
actually
comfortable.
spoken to any of them? Because I've heard
You've heard
other.
otherwise?
I've
Well,
heard
I'm
otherwise.
talking about as a driver.
You see, as a driver, to me on 8th Street, it looks, I've never seen anybody run that. So you haven't said,
Well, I mean, I drive
Driving.
through there all the time, and people are very cooperative in the four-way stop.
but maybe they are on
Well,
8th Street when you know, periodically.
The first major, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the first major reason for the four-way stops was because people who lived up there could not back out in the street
Right.
without getting run over. That was the major purpose of the
I can see
four-way
that.
stops. Now, it has no doubt helped some with the speed too. But anyways, that's,
I'm not a mathematician, but if I had to put a number on it, when I sat and watched 8th Street that day, and it was from about, I want to say like 4:45 to like 5 or 5:45 or 6:15 or
that's your
something.
busiest time.
I would say 10% of the cars came to an absolute complete stop. I would say 10% of the cars didn't even slow down and just kept driving. I would say 80% of the cars almost stopped, but not
Rolled
quite,
through.
which is probably pretty normal. But the 10% that drove through it is what
Mhm.
concerned me, like they didn't slow down.
And Andrew's on target with that. That's exactly what I saw as well.
And I will say, as a person who doesn't live on those streets, I didn't like it when the town did the stop signs. And I've had some people say, hey, if you get in there, you ought to try to get those stop signs taken down. So when I was knocking doors, I asked people in Trumbull, what do you think about these stop signs? And pretty much everybody said the same thing, like they didn't totally fix the problem, but I'm glad it's there. And that was kind of what I heard, if I can give any feedback.
What I would think on 8th Street is it's just an entirely different topography. On Trogdon, it's kind of flat where the stop signs are. You can see the intersection. You can see you have a cross street that's active. On 8th Street, on one side, you've got it's used to be a business, but basically a private driveway now, so you don't expect much coming out there. That other cross street, I don't know what the name is.
J Street.
J Street, you hardly ever see a vehicle there. And so people, I think, just think they can fly through without consequences. Where on Trogdon, you might get hit if you don't stop, and you can see what's going on.
Well, in the past behavior, I think the police department has been successful, where people wouldn't be creeping through that four-way stop, looking to their right to see if you're sitting up there. So we've made some headway. Before we knock you, about all that stuff, we really have. And now just to get the speed limit till you get to the sign is, to me.
Has anybody ever heard anything about what happened to that pull behind speed limit sign we used to have?
We still have it.
Oh, I heard it got stolen.
No. It's
Why do you pull it behind you?
it's like the traffic sign that you hang, but it's about 20 years old. So it was on a whole trailer, and you had to have a trailer
Like a
hitch
parade,
and pull it
traffic
and set it
parade.
up, and it would only last one day. And it has huge batteries in it, and it was just not cost effective for us to keep replacing the batteries in it. But we still have it,
Could we sell it?
I'm sure.
Would you want people putting up their own stop signs?
Actually, I don't know if we can or not,
Just couldn't
because
get it to the
it
general
has a
public.
radar unit in it that
Uh,
emits a microwave signal, and you actually have to have an FCC license to.
I see.
While we're on traffic, this is a little off the subject, but similar, something that's concerned me, and I've said this probably many times, y'all have heard me. I'm concerned about those cars that park at the top of 9th Street. I'm afraid somebody's gonna get a head-on collision there. Because at least 2 times in the last year, I've had to pretty much come to a complete stop because the car coming down the hill was over the yellow line in my lane. And I just want to voice that, so if it ever happens, I can say, I warned y'all.
Chief, how many accidents have we had? I've heard we've had 2 recent accidents on 9th Street of cars parked to the side and being hit. Just one.
Yeah, there was a second accident at the bottom of 9th Street. It was late at night. It was a single car.
I don't have a lot of complaints about that now, but at the time that the car was black and you were driving down through there when it was dark, I was certainly waiting for somebody to be hit.
Dean Ledbetter actually recommended people do that. When he came
mm,
some years ago, when we were working on trying to slow down traffic on the grid streets, he recommended that people park out in the street because it's like putting in a traffic calming mechanisms. And it doesn't cost us a dime, but it causes us to have to slow down as we're going up and down that hill. And so it's like, kind of like your experiment on
Right.
Sixth Street.
Can I make a comment on that? So Rob and I actually talked about that as a possible solution for 8th Street. Because 8th Street is very wide. 9th Street is actually narrower than 8th Street. And the trees and the hills in front of some of the houses sort of produce that phenomenon that you're describing, which people in that industry call vertical friction. And so you don't really need cars parked on 9th Street to create vertical friction, but that application might work somewhere else. And so we thought about that as a solution for speeds on some other streets. But I think 9th Street is special in that it already has the trees and so forth that I mentioned, but also because it's so heavily used by the fire trucks, that probably wouldn't be the best solution for that.
Andrew Dean Ledbetter was, what was he, our regional engineer? Not, but he was a regional employee with DOT for years.
I would not be the first one to park my car out there, because I ain't trying to get my car yet. Don't tell me.
I agree. I think it has potential to be in danger. And if something happened and the town allowed cars to be there, would we be at legal risk, Danny?
I don't believe so.
They just chose to park the car there, so if they get hit, they get hit.
That's correct.
Dean recommended piling brush in the street.
Ooh,
Anything,
stretch up the place.
anything that would narrow the street
Yeah.
would calm the flow of traffic. And so, that's a DOT.
Do you have to paint lines to do that, or just, do you have to do like that? Like, do you have to have parking spaces, or? I mean, if everybody did it, it probably would be a little less dangerous maybe, because it'd be like a whole line of cars.
We see lots of communities, like in apartment complex and stuff, who park in rows in front of their houses and not necessarily lined.
You have a lot of it at front Third Street in the housing. It just kind of,
Sometimes on Troutman, there's a lot of
Yeah.
people are living in those apartments.
Okay. We should
that's
have-
true.
Those are possible solutions.
All right. Okay. That gets us on down to item number 10, business. Wilson?
Okay, so the first item under business is donation of the surplus generator. At the last meeting, you asked us to reach out to a nonprofit here in North Wilkesboro and see if they were also interested in the generator. And Dale got a visit from the guy from that place, Wilkes Ministry of Hope, and he is also interested. And so we've advertised it as a possible donation to both of those. And so I'm essentially just asking you all tonight to choose which one you want to donate to, and we'll donate to that particular organization.
What is the other one?
Wilkes Ministries of Hope.
John Triplett.
Y'all know what they do?
And he's in North Wilkesboro, correct?
He's down there,
Down.
across from Blevins,
Yeah.
sort of across from Blevins.
And the other people are in Wilkesboro?
Correct.
I would like it to benefit North Wilkesboro if possible. I think we, used it for target,
John does,
a lot of good work.
and I'm biased because I helped John a lot with, from the store with his food things and things like that. So I have a special spot in my heart for what John tries to accomplish down there. But I certainly think that Mr. Brenner does a great job also. I'm not discounting what Michael does. Both of them work very, very hard to keep hungry people in this county fed. But I just, like I said, I have a kind of a soft spot for John, and I think he does an extraordinary job with the resources that he has down there.
And I'd add to that, factor, not just because it's John, but he works with the local churches a lot too and helps them, Michael. I mean, I know you know that, but I'd be in favor of John Triplett myself.
I do a Christmas charity event every year. I did it last year, and I've actually donated to both of those before. They're both great organizations, and I think either one would be okay. I also should say that my mom was a foster child, and Michael Brinegar's mom raised my mother, so
Yep.
you could say maybe I have a connection there. But I will say this about, even though it's in Wilkesboro, I think it's the only soup kitchen type thing where they have meals in Wilkes County. And I believe it does serve North Wilkesboro well. And I think there's something to be said for the fact that he reached out and asked about it. So if I chose, I would probably choose that one just because they are a soup kitchen. But either one of those places are good organizations, and I'm glad they're here.
John and them do some food stuff too, feeding people other than just giving stuff away, the canned goods and stuff. They feed people too. I don't know how many times a month or how many times a year, but I do know they do it because, as I said, our church gives to it, and they do have meals down there too.
I mean, hopefully, like, either one of them can get it fixed and use it so that, like, if there's ever like an emergency situation and they don't have power, they can continue to do what they do to serve the community. So I really hope they can get it fixed.
Both. Hey,
Do we need to vote on
We've
this?
only got one to donate.
Say again?
We've only got one surplus generator to donate.
what the, all of them? All.
It might be hard to get one, I mean, somebody's gonna have to invest some money, most likely, I would think, to get the thing to run. So it might be hard to, have a group effort, but that's the motion you wanna make.
If they want it, if they won't do, well, I say good.
So is there any sort of, like, if they, or is it, we make a motion, we just give it to them? Or can we say, are you guys gonna fix this and use it, or are you just gonna take it and sell it? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
We don't do that.
No, I don't wanna do that.
No.
I would wanna see them use it.
They'll use it.
I think both places has got intentions of using it.
Yeah.
Both places has got food coolers, that if the power goes out, they need emergency power.
Yeah,
And I would hope that they would work together
Yeah.
well enough.
yeah.
For if one place was out and the other one wouldn't, that they could shut the generator, but I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
they would.
Is it movable? I mean, is it, you, like, if Michael needed it from John, could he call him up and go, hey, I gotta have this generator? Could it be like moved from 268 over there to Curtis Bridge in a matter of hours, or?
When we had it in service, we had it mounted on a trailer, and we did move it from location to location.
But it's no longer mounted on a trailer.
It's not, but all you'd have to do is just set it back on the trailer.
So what would you do? You'd like cool one place and then their cooler's cool, then you can move it, I guess? Something.
You could, but hopefully the distance between those two places, both of them would be able to purchase the same.
Yeah.
But I don't know they would work together. I'm just saying, I hope they would.
They would. I feel
I'm sure they
sure. I
would.
know both guys. I feel sure they would.
I'm sure Michael will.
Yeah, I'm sure they would.
And they have, both those places have trailers that can set that thing on and take it from one place to the other. I know that.
So do we just need to make a motion?
Well, I would make a motion that you choose one to donate it to, but when we convey it to them, we'll convey it to them with a letter that says, we hope you'll share this with your neighbor and make it available to this other group that they need it.
I'll make a motion, we donate the surplus generator to Wilkes Ministries of Hope.
I second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, comments?
With that understanding that we make that conveyance.
Right. Okey dokey. All of those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, unopposed, motion carries. Thank you very much, folks. I think it's a good thing. Okay. We got under business, item E.
Yes, sir. So Debbie has a correction to that one that I'll ask her to hand out. All right, so I'm glad Dale's here. He can tell us a little bit more about this, but I wanted to point out before we got started that the map in the published agenda is wrong. The map I'm about to send you is the correct one. The area of 9th Street that's going to be paved will not go all the way down to Wilkesboro Boulevard, but just the 2 blocks between D Street and Main Street. However, it also includes C Street from 9th Street to CBD loop. So it's still a fairly sizable amount of area to be repaved. But it is fortunate and a happy coincidence for us that this visible street that we all want to be paved is also objectively one of the worst streets in town. So I'll just go through the pictures here. That's right outside of Town Hall. This is 1 block up from Town Hall. You can't really see it there, but it's like a 3-inch little blemish in the pavement there. And there you can see it even from that distance. And of course, not even pointing these out specifically, but look all the cracks in the street there. Again, some more patches. And, I think everyone knows this, and that's down by Wilkesboro, so that's not relevant here. But, milling and repaving these streets is more than just about what they look like. It's also about how they function. If there's cracks and holes that moisture can get into, and you go through a freeze and thaw cycle, then the streets come apart quicker. So you want to make sure there's a uniform paving job to prevent water from intruding and breaking up the pavement. Here's another image from 9th Street. And so this is just a sample of some of the deficiencies there on 9th and C Street. So my proposal is that we take our power bill allocation from the state for this year, which is about $132,000, and allocate it into the maintenance budget of the streets department for the purpose of milling and repaving the streets depicted on this map. We've gotten a couple quotes. There's a low bid that is significantly lower, but still close enough that I think it's a credible bid. All the bidders are what the statutes would call responsible and reasonable and responsible bids. And so, I believe that we could get it done for the cost that's shared in the low bid. But because this is a big appropriation of money, we need you all to give your blessing for this. And so I'm asking you tonight to approve a budget amendment for $132,730 from FY 2021 Powell bill to Streets Department for the purpose of repaving. And it says other needs, and the other needs would be like repainting the lines and that kind of stuff. So I'm asking for your approval of that recommendation here tonight.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the budget amendment appropriating $132,730 from fiscal year 20 and 21 Powell bill to the Streets Department budget for the 9th Street, C Street repaving project and other needs.
Okay, you hear the motion. You gonna have a second?
I'll second that.
Any other questions, comments, or?
I got one quick one. So what's different with this map? Did it originally have 9th Street going all the way to Wilkesboro Avenue?
Yes, sir.
How is it down through there?
It's a lot better.
It's better.
It's not great. I mean, some of the pictures on here were of,
I was thinking it was kind of rough there.
you have like this patch right near the farmer's market. You've got this patch here from a repair we made. But by and large, it's in much better condition than the section up there near Town Hall.
So it doesn't make sense to do it now.
It would extend the cost significantly.
Oh,
Are we able to verify the folks we hire to see references, history, Better Business Bureau? I don't know. So to be able to,
Yeah.
you know, for that.
Yes, we do call references, especially if it's a company we've never dealt with.
just coming off of what we discussed in the last meeting, I don't want to get in the same situation.
Yes, we do verify.
Thank you, Dan.
Is there anything that can be done or should be done about how when you come off Wilkesboro Avenue onto Ninth Street down there, it's like a real drop off? You know what I'm talking about?
Wilkesboro Avenue.
Like at the bottom near like the ABC store when you take a left on Ninth Street?
I don't know, I haven't.
I had 3 emails about that. I didn't think it was a big deal, but I talked to you about it. Remember, and you said when we
Have they
paid.
been to the ABC store first?
Maybe.
I mean, I know
it-
what you're talking about.
It is a little bit of a drop off.
My recollection was that when the state repaved Wilkesboro Avenue or Boulevard, whichever one it is, last, they created that grade so that when we repaved, it would be flush.
Ready to make a vote?
Need a motion?
We got it.
Sorry, Dan.
Oh, okay.
I second.
Motion second. All those in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those like sign, none opposed. All righty. Takes care of that one.
Okay, so
Smooth to Park Splash.
for next item, Debbie's got another document that I'll ask her to hand out. This is, I got one. This is the document that is referenced at the bottom of your face page. A timeline of relevant dates as they relate to the splash pad project. As you can see, the project is 3.5 years old. And that's why we're taking the action we're taking now. I won't go over all those dates, but as I chat, I hope you'll read over that. Last time we met, we discussed this a little bit, and you all asked for some more information. I've got some of that information, but I don't have all of it. And so if you want us to go back and get more information, we can. But I'll provide you with what I got, and perhaps that'll give you the information you need to vote. So the first thing you asked us to bring back was the cost of tearing down the splash pad and filling in that area. If we don't decide to move forward, Dale has estimated that that would cost about $16,500. That involves tearing down what's in there now, disposing of it, filling it in with concrete, and replacing the fence, which would have to be taken out to complete that demolition project. So $16,500 for that. There was a question of whether we'd have to pay Lowe's back. I'm uncertain. I was reading through the terms of the grant, and it was a little bit ambiguous about whether we'd have to return that money, but I think there's a likelihood that we'd have to. And of course, that was $29,500. So putting those together, back of the napkin math, if we decide not to go forward, we're still going to have to pay $46,000 out of our pocket just to get back to where we were before. We're doing going back to Angela, your question from before, we're doing our diligence now on each of the bidders for this contract. So far, we found nothing concerning, but we still got a few more calls to make to other customers that they've built amenities for before. And so if you take action tonight, just know that it's not approving a specific contractor. It's just moving the money into place and giving us the go-ahead. We'll still have a little bit more work to do before we approve which contractor or recommend which contractor we want to go with. So this isn't the last step, it's just the next step in this project. This would move $100,000 from our contingency fund into the parks budget. It would be supplemented by savings in the parks budget that we expect to see in the current year that we capture and use to pay to complete this project. So about $150,000 in total is what we reserve and make available to complete this project. So that's all I got. Is there any questions or comments on the timeline or any of the other information that I've presented here?
Am I So if he just, do we see, like, I guess Danny, this is for you. Is this likely we will receive any money from this? Let's be real.
I'd like to discuss the legal options in closed session if we could.
Okay.
Wilson, I'd like to go back. This is the second entry, September 2017, Town Signs contract with Maston Aquatic. So we had a contract, but it was with a scofflaw, so it didn't do any good.
Well, that, and also it just wasn't a very comprehensive contract.
Okay.
I've got a copy of it here that I can pass around. And you can see it doesn't have very many legal terms. So all those sort of protections that you usually put in a contract were absent from this one. It essentially only described, the construction element of the project. And so when the relationship did start to sour, the, terms that would govern disputes and so forth they didn't exist. And it wasn't until Gary and I started crafting these amendments to the contract that it really had that legal sort of heft behind it. So I'll pass this around, if you wouldn't mind, to the board, Debbie, so that they can see what the original contract is, the whole package. And so I'll point out that there was a stage where there should have been a bona fide sort of amendment to the contract, and that was when the town accepted the Lowe's grant, which sort of expanded the scope of the project. We dealt with that as a change order only and not as an amendment to the contract. And the one thing that the change order lacked was a revised completion date. And so arguably you could say that the completion date from the first agreement was still in force, but I think that change order, in good faith would have pushed the completion date out, but it should have been codified at that time what the new completion date was, and it wasn't.
So now, if I understand, you said move $100,000 from the contingency fund.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's money we have available in our budget that we can spend now that is not earmarked for anything else.
That's correct.
And why is it there, Wilson?
For this very reason. The last couple of years, as we've been trying to improve our credit profile for our big capital projects and our appearances before the local government commission, we've been trying not to allocate our fund balance funds because they look at that as a signal of your financial health. And so instead of keeping our rainy day fund in our official fund balance, we've kept a separate rainy day fund in a contingency fund that we can use more easily than we could our fund balance, and without the same sort of penalty for our credit rating that using our fund balance would cause.
So it's a savings account that we have set aside to use for things like beautifying our parks.
Yes, ma'am.
And for no other reason than things like this that arise, because they do.
The budget amendments that you all passed in the consent had a little bit of money from that fund to help pay for some unintended expenses at the water plants. So those pumps going out and so forth. So it's for unanticipated expenses.
And we've not been able to spend anything for at least 2 years, maybe 2.5.
From the official fund balance. The
We've
last
been
2 years,
just
we have spent some of the contingency both years.
Okay. But we've been extremely conservative in how we've spent the people's money so we could build up and do the things that we needed to do. And then the $50,000 comes from savings, thank you, Bert, that that have come about because of things we could not do, we would have ordinarily done during COVID time,
Yes, ma'am.
like not opening the swimming pool, because that always, it's a subsidy.
That constitutes part of it. Not having the Christmas party, not having Woodlawn Center open for a year. So having less, maintenance things to do on those facilities. So it wasn't, one activity that we didn't do that caused us to save that much money in the parks budget, but little savings here and there have added up to that amount.
Well, I'm gonna say what I said before. I believe we all want to see our parks improved. This is not the be-all, end-all splash pad. It's not something that you might see in Seattle where it's on a city block and kids come and play every day, all day. And we're just not there yet, but we're here. We could do this. And I think it would be something, we can't do kiddie pools anymore. Those have been sort of pretty much outlawed by the health department because children are in diapers. The things that happen in diapers get in the pool water and kids get sick. And so this is a way that kids can play. Nelson has said all along, he thinks people will come from out of town, that this will be that fun. We are late getting in on the splash pad phenomenon, and and other communities already have these things in place, so I don't know that they'll come, but I think we owe it to our citizens to try to improve our parks, and this is something that would definitely improve Smoot Park. There are worries about Smoot Park, but as you upgrade a facility, you pull in different kinds of people. And I think it would be in the best interest of our community to move forward with this.
I agree.
I have not been an advocate necessarily always of the splash pad, and just because of the legalities but I feel like if we do the splash pad, I don't want that to stop there. I think our facilities where the people eat and our restroom facilities need to be revamped. This needs to be a part of a plan. This is not the be all end all. Because there's lots of care that can continue to happen at the park, and it can be a great park. It is a great park. We can continue to add to that park. So as I spoke fairly negative last time, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and say, I am hoping this splash pad is just a huge turning point for our Parks and Rec department. And moving forward, just to, again, to make sure that, and that was long before you, Wilson, when this came up, but to make sure we don't step in it again.
If I can make one comment really quickly, and that is that as an update to a project that staff have been working on for a while, the Outdoor Economy Project, the next step in that project is to do an assessment of the counties, the full county, Wilkesboro, North Wilkesboro, and the counties' recreation facilities, and to see if they're adequate and they match with what the traveler and the park user needs. And I think that once that work is done, it'll really be a guide, a map for us to figure out what we need to do to improve our parks. So it's not exactly a parks master plan for the town of North Wilkesboro, but I'm hoping that it will function that way.
Ideally, I think we need a master plan, much like we talked about the layout of our downtown and aspects of that. I think the park is very much in line for that very same work.
Well, we've renovated the bathroom facilities down at the tennis courts. They've been renovated, but the ones up there at the pool, that inside there, we need to do some work on those. But
Yeah, they need a little attention.
I agree with what you and Debbie have said. It's, and the tennis courts, they're used. So I think it'd be our due diligence to work to serve the people for a place to, and they made a little history walking trail around there. There's been some improvements
There
made.
has been, and I think there's room for other great things
I
there.
guarantee it,
I think
yeah.
it could be a super park.
And I appreciate your comments. That's all I've got on
I feel like the Grinch that I'm not on board with it. I feel like I've been pretty vocal about how I don't think Smith Park's a great park. I think it needs to be cleaned up. I think that there needs to be some money spent on it. It needs to be upgraded. And I can't spend money, like with my vote, so to speak, on this one thing that's a splash pad when I see the whole park needs work. If the whole park, there was a plan, or the whole park was like in nice shape and we had the money, I would say I'm all for it. But as it is, I see it as like if you're driving down the road and you see a house that's kind of run down and it needs some money spent on it, it needs to be refurbished, but that hasn't happened. But yet there's a nice shiny sports car in the driveway. That doesn't make sense to me, and that's what this feels like to me. I would love to see a splash pad there for the kids. I hate that it's gone bad like this, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be a $260,000 or $80,000 splash pad, and I don't think that's fiscally responsible. I don't like seeing the number that we're gonna have to pay 46 if we don't do it. I would like to see that 16.5 have been a little lower. And I really hate to have to give back money to somebody that donated it to us, but I guess I've said kind of enough. That's just where I'm at. I would love to see Smoot Park fixed up in our parks. I think we need to address it. I think for people moving here, particularly when you have a place that's bringing jobs in. A guy called me last week that is moving here from for Samaritan's Purse. A friend of mine gave him the number. He lives in Fleetwood near Ash. And it just kind of demonstrated that we do have people that want to move to Wilkes County, North Wilkesboro, our area, to work at places. And the things that they're looking at are things like the park system, the schools. And this is a little off subject, but I'll throw it up. He brought up he was scared to move here because of crime statistics. And I talked to Robbie about that for a while. But I think the parks is a big part of that thing. And I think we need to do something, however we can, to make Smoot Park nicer or readdress our parks.
Well, to me, this would be your first best step.
To me, this would be a big step in
Absolutely.
improving Smith Park.
And then take another and another. We can't do it all at one time. I agree with you, Andrew.
Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we move forward with using the $100,000 from the contingency fund and the $50,000 from savings in our funding Parks and Recreation this fiscal year, and complete the splash pad.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? We've had a pretty good round of it. Okay, all those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries 3-2. Okay. We'll move forward. All righty, that gets us down to item number 11, policy. Zoning ordinance and town code update. Meredith, I believe that's your
Yes, sir. So good evening.
time.
We have a few things to discuss before you call for the public hearing on this item next month. Few policy choices. We can discuss them tonight, or if you want to wait and discuss them before you do the vote. We just need to make a decision on a few small items that came up during the 160B updates. So, it's entirely up to how you want. I'll go through them very briefly.
Can you get
Copy.
a copy, yeah.
Of the, let's see, in your agenda packet, there is a list of all the policy choices. And then if you want, and get Wilson to put them up on the screen.
Yeah, please.
You can actually go and click on the different. Really clear.
Which one do you?
Go all the way to the bottom. We'll start with chapter 1. Or, I'm sorry, chapter 2. There were no policy changes in chapter 1. That was an ETJ update. So this is Town Code 2 or administration. Essentially, what we need to talk about is the makeup of the planning board. if we want to add members or subtract them, we have to have equal representation. So we've got to have either 4 ETJ members and 4 in-town members, or 3 and 3. So at the same time, we want to make sure that's an item in our zoning ordinance also. So we need
I
that.
believe the planning board asked to make it 4-4, did they not?
Yes, the planning board asked to do, instead of having to cut a member, just add a member. And so that was kind of the general consensus, and I imagine the Board of Adjustment also.
So do we need to vote on these policies individually, or do we?
You can do it, at the time of the public hearing. I just want to have this discussion time to see what you guys want to see going forward, or if you want to keep it, 3-3.
Well, my suggestion doing it at the public hearing, that way we have
Okay, sure.
people.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to get it in front of you so you knew
That'd be my
most of these items are gonna be mandatory. These are the ones that are optional, but we still have to make a decision on them. So, because 160D brought them to
How
life.
can you have, if you have, if we have, we,
Well, what I'll do for the public hearing is I'll print everything for you guys. It's just, it's gonna be like this thick to go through. So I wanted to wait until we got everything, firmed up a little bit better. And it is all on our website, but if you prefer a printed copy, we
I
can do
would,
that.
I would.
Okay, we'll do that for the public hearing. And we'll include it in the agenda packet too, so
Please.
I'll make sure, Debbie doesn't go crazy, because it's probably gonna be a 300-page agenda.
We
Just
get,
a heads up.
I get it.
Yes,
Will
sir.
my iPad be able to hold that if I put it on the iPad?
It should.
I do too.
So we're getting books. I want one.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'll take a book.
I'm just asking, will I blow mine up?
Well, I didn't know, I was gonna say, I didn't know if you wanna have the draft reprinted again before we do the final binding of everything, because I'm gonna get you a final one. I just didn't know if you want another draft.
I don't mind a PDF, I don't want paper.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Okay, so Bert, you would like a copy?
No,
PDF.
You want,
Yeah.
okay, we'll do that.
Do we have to go through this at that meeting?
Yes, unless
Okay.
you wanna have like a discussion tonight, if you had questions or if something popped up and you're just like, can we talk about it?
But we did, so the book would be helpful, or a PDF on an iPad. I'll take the book. I don't have an iPad.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
I'll loan
Sorry,
you one, Andrew.
I'm good.
So you do already have the draft of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah,
And I think the last agenda had these other 3 chapters, but we can reprint them.
okay.
So all right, if you wouldn't mind, tell me who wants a book and who wants, all right, so Andrew wants paper.
I collect these things, you see.
Okay, so you want the paper, do you want me to reprint the zoning ordinance or what
If
you
I've already
have?
got it, then there's no need to.
Oh, yeah, so does that spiral
Yeah, I still
down?
have that.
Okay, does everybody else want a PDF?
Yes.
Please.
Back to questions. In the past, when I was on the planning board, sometimes we had a hard time finding people for the board.
Yes.
Has that been true since I was changed to this board? Have you found in the past 4 years, say, it's been difficult for people?
The Board of Adjustment's been more challenging than the planning board. That's such a specific niche of a board. It's not a broad brush. So we still have an opening right now on the Board of Adjustments. I'm gonna go to the county with an official letter versus phone calls and emails and say, okay, we've got to get another person on this board. So,
Because they're probably scared.
yeah, probably. Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there though. So, what I had tonight
Nobody's
were just,
volunteering.
what I had tonight were just, the simple policy changes. So,
So do you want to finish it tonight? Is it gonna be fairly quick?
yeah, I was gonna say, that was one of the items. The other thing we had talked about was when you have a let's see, that was chapter 2. I'll go in order. So chapter 5 is our buildings ordinance, or minimum housing and buildings. The only question there was, do we want to enforce minimum housing in the ETJ? We do not currently. We can. That is a lot of extra, manpower and regulations, so that's something to think about too. That was a 160D. Okay.
Michael, I would not recommend that.
They have no representation on the town board. I do not think that is something that is within, I don't think we should do that. I think that's inappropriate.
Sure. We do enforce zoning and subdivision.
I don't have a problem with that, but
Okay, just as a reminder, we do enforce some things in our ETJ, just not everything. Okay, so in our zoning ordinance, the same thing at the beginning, we talk about the planning board needs equal representation in the Board of Adjustment, so that's something to be thinking about. One of the items also we talked about was settling violation claims with zoning violations. Right now, I have that authority, which seems contradicting since I am enforcing it, and then I would turn around and waive it. So we talked about if the board wanted to have that authority, the town manager, or I've looked at some of our other town codes, we don't have an option. It is what it is. You earn violation, these are the penalties, these are the fees. There is no get out of jail card essentially with this. So that's another option we could talk about next meeting. And then the last one is, as the Board of Commissioners, you have 2 items that you review as a quasi judicial governing body, which means you take off your hat as essentially your legislation right now. And you have to put the quasi judicial hat on, which means you can't talk to anybody about the case. And you can't talk to each other about the case, which is a little tough because, usually you collaborate and discuss things. And that is if you're going to have an airport or a ground floor residential in our downtown business district. So those are the 2 things you can keep as a governing body. You just have to remember there's different rules, or you can give it to the Board of Adjustment, because they're the ones that review all the other special use permits. So those are really the only.
That one's something we need to put some thought into.
Yes, it is. So think about
Seriously.
those, because we want to have a decision at our May 4th meeting when we, go through the public hearing and do the vote.
But now do remember, Angela, that the rules for the ground floor residential are already in place. All we would be doing is ruling whether or not that property meets what we've already put in
What we
place,
set up, correct.
which
Okay.
is the 4,500, the 60%, that so on and so forth. So it's not like we
So
would
we've already
be
been there and
arbitrating.
done that. We're just,
Right, we wouldn't be arbitrating whether or not we're going to allow it. It's a matter of, does it meet the criteria?
gotcha.
And additionally, the criteria with quasi judicial, you have to look at is it in harmony with our comp plans, with the area, with zoning? There's all these different other factors that have to be considered in addition to what Michael was just talking about. So
I
it's a
think
little-
I'd like
little
to
different.
see this board do that because in reflecting over what has happened in historically, voters don't have any impact on decisions that are made by our Board of Adjustments. And that's the way it's all set up. But I'm not sure I think that's fair. I think that voters, that it is democracy. It is a good thing for the people who vote for us to be able to say, I think you lost your mind when you made this decision or that decision, and to have some recourse. I just think it's more fair for voters to be able to speak. And,
So I do want to give you a little bit of more info for quasi judicial. You have to have standing to essentially speak for or against it. So if you're a neighbor or you have an adjoining property, you have grounds to stand up and say, here's the evidence, this is what I want to see. I don't agree with this. You can bring in appraisals. So there's different steps. It's like going to court versus coming into a public setting like tonight and speaking. So it's very structured.
I do understand that, and we did have
Yeah.
one of those since I've been in office, but I just think that we're voting and affecting our neighbors with everything we do. And that, and we are responsible ultimately, for whatever occurs, whether we feel we did the right thing or not, our neighbors have the right to make us a vote. And I just think that is the right way to do it. It does bother me some that there's really all our neighbors, all voters can do is vote us out if they get mad at the Board of Adjustments, and so that doesn't do any good these days. But if this board makes some of those quasi-judicial decisions, I think it's more fair to the voters.
We can keep it.
I agree with what she's saying about the voters and stuff. But as long as there's a board of adjustment, I'd probably rather see them do it because why these two specific issues and not everything else? I mean, there's other important issues that they're making decisions on that the voters are gonna have something to say. Believe me, I've had plenty of phone calls about board of adjustment decisions in the past year. And I don't understand what makes those two situations different. And I'm probably the least qualified person in this room to say that, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. It was just how it was set up with the way our zoning ordinance was, and we can keep it. We'll call them provisional use permits versus a special use permit. So,
Meredith, I am curious because I was part of that decision process on the planning board or when the ground floor residential was put in place. And I don't remember how did that become part of all the things that, how did that become a decision that's grouped in with airports? I mean, airports, ground floor residential. I mean, how did that get to that point, based on what we did because that was basically enacting a text amendment which set up the ground floor residential based on a set of criteria. So how did it become this board's decision and any other at that point, which we can't use anymore, understand conditional use, because it was a conditional use for ground floor? How did they get here?
I'll have to research and see what the history from when the planning board made the recommendation to the board of commissioners voting on it. They could have made that change, or for all I know, it could have been a typo. So I will verify that.
Just
So
curious.
it's not from the
It's a-
legislature.
What was it?
It's not from the legislature
No,
that they
this
said.
is a local choice.
Okay.
So the
Well, that's a
legis,
good point, Mike.
Yeah, I mean,
wondered that too.
it's just like airports, 903 Main Street.
I hear you, I know what you're saying. Well,
okay, so I'll verify that, and then if we do keep it, the only recommendation was to offer some training, just so y'all can remember, when you do have those items, you take off the commissioner hat, you put on the board of adjustment hat, because it is a very different hearing process than like what you normally go through.
From what I know about the board of adjustment process, it's important to note that whether we're elected or they do it, it's supposed to be done by like the law, so to speak. It's not about what you want or whatever, so.
Yeah, so there's very specific criteria, hence we'd want to go through a practice or training exercise so you're familiar with it. Because, yeah, someone can't call you up and say, I don't like this, don't do it. That's not how quasi judicial works. Pretend like you're going to court, essentially. And you're a jury, you have to stay unbiased, you have to look at the facts and the evidence that's presented to you.
When do we have to make that decision? Is that tonight?
May 4th. You got a little time, but I want to go ahead and get everyone thinking about it. So, May 4th comes around and you're just not like, oh, this is a big item we need to talk about. So those are the only policy choices. Everything else, the state legislation has said we have to, which was mostly minor items.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to call for a public hearing on May the 4th, 2021 for the changes that we have reviewed over the last few months to our zoning and town code ordinances.
Okay, I have a motion, I need a second, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. There's been quite a bit of discussion, and anybody else has anything, speak now. If not, all those in favor, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. None opposed, motion carries. All right. Okay. Moving right along. Board members, topics can be brought up. If there's any others that what was brought up.
Mr. Mayor, I have two quick questions. Both are for Meredith. Did you discover anything as far as the grandfathering of the commercial status of the Clark property out in the Fair Plains area.
So what I presented to you all at the last meeting is all I have discovered. I went through all of our rezoning files going back to, I want to say the 1970s when we started zoning. And now I have not found it where we have actively downstoned the property, which means someone would have come in and said, let's go back to like a residential. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to find zoning maps to verify what happened. And the last zoning map I found was in 1986. And it showed that area as being a business zoning in the middle of all that sea of residential. And then I'm trying to locate a map from the 90s because I go from 86 to 2005 with no documentation. So I've got one more box to go through to see if there's any more like evidence of changes.
Yes.
All right, and then the other question I have is we had the gentleman who made the request for that broad stroke.
Yes.
That was going back to the planning board to kind of hone that in a little bit to see if it was more plausible.
Right.
And so that's where it,
I haven't made any headway because I'm trying to finish the 160D because I've got to get the last 2 chapters to the planning board. So what I was gonna do is reach back out to him and schedule something for our May meeting.
Okay.
Just so for April, we could get through all the 160D and be final with those items. So then they could focus solely on that kind of text amendment.
thank you, Mr. Mayor, I'm done.
Anybody else?
I've got a couple little things. One, I've mentioned before, maybe I just spoke to Wilson about it, I can't remember. About performance measures with the mowing, and with the mowing season upon us, like, is there any changes to that? I guess what I would like to see is like this grass that people see when they come to our shows and events that's around town. I'd like to see it as well manicured as we can do it with the resources we have. If that means anything, like, just make it look nice.
Dale and I will work together to come up with some standards that we can set for those guys and track their performance based on those standards.
Is there like a protocol from the school government that does stuff like that or helps?
Oh yeah, there's a whole industry in this field about performance measures. So I think that we'll have lots of resources to refer to for that.
And the other thing, with the town manager evaluation process thing, we were gonna try to like take a look at that. Is there?
Yes, sir. That'll be on the agenda for the workshop at the end of the month.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, I need a motion for us to go into closed session.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we go into closed session. Do I have to read the statute?
Yes, you did.
Oh, man.
On the very back page there.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we conduct a closed session according to GS 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by a public body in order to maintain the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body.
I second that motion.
Okay.